So now, without further ado, please, Thomas, I already see you. The stage is all yours. Very quickly about Thomas, I also see some names that attended our conference last year in Frankfurt about tokenization. You will know him from his fabulous speech that he had given on tokenization. He was deeply involved also from the Galaxy side in the All Unity project that you know for the Euro stablecoin. And before joining Galaxy, where he's now the head of tokenization, he also worked for Paxos and also for the Federal Reserve in the US. So he has plenty of knowledge how both the current banking and financial system works, but also where the future is heading. So thanks for joining this call, Thomas. And yeah, we're looking forward to your insights on how you tokenized your stock.
Thank you both, Max and Vicky, for having us and for organizing this. With that, I'm happy to share screen if that works. Give me 1 second. And really to talk through, what we spent a good chunk of this year doing, which was tokenizing our stock with Superstate. So beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to assume everyone can see my screen. But at a high level, as Vicky and Max mentioned, I lead tokenization here at Galaxy. Been in the at the firm for about 2.5 years. Been in the space for about 5 or 6 at this point. And so, at a very high level, I've wanted to, and we've wanted to tokenize our stock specifically for a long time at this point. And we've seen just about every cycle, people talk about the promise of tokenization and the promise of tokenizing equities specifically, because if you look at the back end structure of the way that the equity structure today, there is a lot of inefficiency. There can be 8 to 10 intermediaries in a typical transaction when you log on to your Robinhood or TD Ameritrade or whatever account it is to purchase whatever stock you choose. And so really we know that there's opportunity here for tokenization to improve the system. And really until this cycle, we hadn't really realized that. And so from a Galaxy perspective, before we even get into what we did, I really wanted to highlight on how we planned on approaching it, because we'd seen others in the market, jump into this space this year specifically and really focus on tokenizing stocks via SPVs overseas or outside of the US to give crypto native players exposure to underlying off-chain stocks. And while that definitely creates additional exposure and really kicked the conversation more broadly much faster and accelerated it, not only in the market, but also for regulators. On the Galaxy side, we really wanted to come up with a solution where the token itself was the equity and that there was no SPV there. So we spent a lot of time this year working with regulators and partners in the space to think through how we would do it. And so to that end, this is kind of what we actually did. So in early September, we announced that we tokenized our stock in partnership with Superstate, which, full disclosure, is one of our portfolio companies who we know well, as an on-chain transfer agent. And so now essentially you can access Galaxy stock directly on the Solana blockchain, meaning that, on my Phantom wallet on my phone today, I'm holding tokenized Galaxy stock that is, SEC registered Class A common stock. It's not ownership of an SPV that owns that underlying stock. It is the stock itself. And so we were the first NASDAQ listed US company to do so on a major chain such as Solana. And so that was really transformative in terms of what that structure looks like. And to us, more importantly, as our role as a leader in the space, we really stepped back and said, look, we think this is best for Galaxy and our shareholders. More importantly, we think it's better for what the market could be. And really, we wanted to use our stock as the example for what we think the broader market adoption curve could look like. So as I mentioned, that's kind of what we really did. And then it's different because there's no SPV. The share is the token itself. And what I should note is this is a very, very limited initial project that we did, to the point that it can't actually be traded. And so from that perspective, really what it is I can go on my brokerage account, I can DRS the shares down to the transfer agent, and then have those shares tokenized and sent to my wallet but I cannot move them outside of a whitelisted pool of KYC wallets that are approved through Superstate. I can't add them to exchanges. I can't add them to DEXes. Truly, in this first step, I can tokenize my shares and I can send them to other KYC counterparties in the permissioned pool. But I can't do anything beyond that. And so that was really our first step here was, step one was tokenize and allow for transfers. Step two will be trading more broadly on permission DEXes and other, in other parts of the ecosystem. Once we feel comfortable from a regulatory perspective, that we have the confidence that we're making sure that we're, crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's. So that is at a very high level, kind of what we did today and what we plan to do in the future once we can enable AMM trading and across broader DeFi. So as noted, just some things below, Superstate has complete control over the smart contract, so they can pause and recall tokenized shares. And they also refer the ownership of the different shares up to the main transfer agent. So that essentially means that from a books and records perspective, from Galaxy's perspective, we still have a full transparency into the ownership of every single share and who those owners are. So that is kind of what we did. And again, we look at this as kind of the second inning or very, very early on in terms of the process. We're very excited for this next step, which will be kind of the trading and integrations across broader parts of crypto once we feel comfortable and know that from a regulatory perspective, we're doing everything that we can be. And really, we chose to do this mainly because we think it is not only best for Galaxy shareholders, but also a good example for the rest of the market to help push innovation in our role as Galaxy. So that is kind of why we did it, what we did, and what we plan to do in the future. And with that, I know I have a few minutes left for Q&A. Before we get to Q&A, I did want to just highlight this is the actual structure of how to tokenize your shares today. Any shareholder who owns our stock, who can be onboarded onto Superstate can do this, but at in 2 minutes or less, essentially, you first onboard to Superstate and provide them your KYC AML information. You then go to your broker, in my case was Fidelity, and ask them to DRS the shares to the TA, and then which is Equinity, and then those shares get sent to Superstate. And then once you're approved and onboarded to Superstate, you can run down and log into Superstate and get those shares tokenized. And those will then end up in your whitelisted Solana wallet. So kind of a process at the moment. We definitely think this is the first iteration, and we think that it will be very much streamlined long term. I don't think this will be the scaled solution for equities on chain in the long run. That being said, we think is indicative of kind of what the potential really is. And so with that, that's kind of where I will pause. I know I have five minutes left to really jump in on all things Q&A, and I will turn the floor back to Max and Vicky on how we want to handle that.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Thomas. There already is one question from Konstantinos. He's praising you. You did an excellent job enabling existing investors to natively tokenize their share class. And he's a big fan of the Superstate solution. But are there any plans to allow investors to directly access tokenized equities?
Yeah, so you can, if you are already onboarded to Superstate, you can purchase those shares. One thing I will note that's important is we really took this approach as we're starting with a kind of project and process focused initial structure. But longer term, we absolutely do see once we get the clarity and once we have that regulatory comfort, we do want to expand the access and really expand our share base, right? Because that's one of the benefits and one of the things that we really are aiming for is to enable additional investor access. The priority for us, though, is doing so in a regulatory compliant way to make sure that we demonstrate what the benefits of the technology are, while also making sure that we're working with regulators. And Galaxy has, we have a history of being a regulatory first company. And so we know that we have the DNA of TradFi and the understanding of TradFi from a regulatory perspective, but the expertise of DeFi. And that's really what this project embodies, is it's a combination of both. And so, we think in the coming months, we'll be able to really address the growth and the next steps of this project as things unfold.
Thank you. Then there's another question. How do regulators and auditors verify that the number of tokenized shares on-chain always matches the locked shares in Superstate's off-chain account?
Yeah, so the way to think about this is there are no kind of locked shares. If you look at Superstate's books and records, they're an on-chain TA registered by SEC. So what that means is their actual books and records, those shares are the tokens themselves. So for my example, where I have, whatever it is, 10 shares in my Phantom wallet on my phone, if Superstate were to, look me up in their backend, they would see that I hold 10 shares. And those shares that they see are the ones in my whitelisted wallet directly. And then they report those up to Equinity that then can report up to Galaxy more broadly. So unlike other structures where there is kind of a locked share or an off-chain version, in this case, that doesn't exist. The actual token is the share itself. And that's why we're so excited about this, because that's really the innovation here.
All right. And then last one, how are banks doing their on-chain and off-chain ledger reconciliation? And what role is Galaxy playing for its clients that have high volume of such transactions? Any plans for automation?
Yeah, so this is the fun part of the adoption curve that we're in today is, in previous cycles, we've been waiting for kind of, these major trends to coalesce. And now that we are getting regulatory clarity, we have technological maturity, and we have major banks, major traditional financial institutions kind of jumping into the space. We have those three things coming together. So what that means is we're now engaging in conversations to really charge ahead with questions like this. And so I think most people in the space now agree that long term, everything will be on chain, right? Today, fractions of a percent are on chain. And so what that means is in the coming years, we're very much going to have an off and on chain structure in our financial system as people make the transition. And so to your point, one of the biggest challenges and opportunities is to be able to create systems that are comfortable going between the two worlds, because as people in this space know, on-off ramps are one of the biggest challenges that we still face today and will likely continue to face until everything is on chain. And Galaxy is very well positioned because of the DNA and expertise that we have in traditional finance, with the experience that we have and focus we have in crypto. It means that we're able to land right at that intersection and help traditional financial institutions make this transition as they kind of invest more and double down more in this space as they see the clear benefits.